Airing first on Asheville FM, this is The Final Straw, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian radio show broadcasting out of occupied Cherokee land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world. This week we had the chance to interview Lelia, who is a community activist and a part of the group Comunidad Colectiva, an immigrant rights group based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We got to talk about a lot of things in this interview: the work that they and other groups do with immigrant and undocumented communities, about the February ICE raids that got national attention, what effective rapid response can look like, and the tension associated with being anti-state and having to negotiate with police and sheriffs for safety reasons, plus many more topics. Before we get started, we wanted to mention something called 287G, which was a contract between local officials and ICE, which essentially made police forces extensions of ICE, and also instituted deportation proceedings as part of run-of-the-mill arrests. This is something that Comunidad Colectiva and many other groups were fighting against in North Carolina. More is explained about this contract later on in the interview, but it gets mentioned fairly heavily before that time.
If you'd like to write to a prisoner, get a paper and pen ready, as I'll be rattling off some names and addresses. In a brief update to last week's interview on the hunger strike by Kinetic Justice Amon of the Free Alabama Movement, we'd like to share the following news. On March 20th, Kinetic Justice, aka Robert Earl Council, resumed his hunger strike as he was transferred briefly to a segregation housing unit at Limestone Prison, but ended the hunger strike within a few days and was transferred to general population at that prison. He can be written at the following address: Robert Earl Council, number 181418, 28779 Nick Davis Road, Harvest, Alabama, 35749. Consequently, 8 of the prisoners transferred with Kinetic in the middle of the night began engaging in a hunger strike in response to their own incarceration in solitary. In a reaction to the hunger strike, the administration cut off water to their cells that they were held in, giving them only bottled water. The 8 prisoners ended their hunger strike on March 22nd, and administration claims they'll be transferred to general population in the Alabama system, as they're not under investigation currently. Their names are as follows, and they'd probably appreciate some letters. Katoni Tellis, number 223155. Marcus Lee, number 175056. Mario Avila, number 259514. Corey Burrows, number 207639. Earl Taylor III, number 168616. Tyree Cochran, number 172306. Earl Manasseh, number 175099. Antonio Jackson, number 246560, and they can be written at Holman Correctional Facility, 1240 Ross Road, Atmore, Alabama, 36502.
But before the interview, here are some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a bomb.
This is a strange time to be alive. A dangerous time if you're committed to antiquated ideas like free thought or human liberty. We're confronted by a new fascist order, a kind of global phenomenon, where power of every kind, political, social, and economic, is concentrating into fewer and fewer hands, where information and power is being consolidated, where even the veneer of liberal democracy is being wiped away. We're expected to remain in our assigned seats, to toe the line, to contribute at gunpoint. We're confronted more and more with what increasingly looks like a global concentration camp. Historically, repression breeds resistance. You expect where tyranny reigns for there to be rebels who rise up to oppose that tyranny. And where the tyranny is more intense, you expect the resistance to be more intense. I could be wrong, but when I look at the current situation, the surveillance police state, I expect to see folks wilding out everywhere. I expect every place on the map to look like Athens, Greece, on a hot summer Friday night with cops on fire and cars tipped over and dumpsters in the streets. Those Greeks sure know how to party. But the world doesn't look like that. Not at all. And in conversations with friends who really do want to wild out, they describe what holds them back. I think probably what they've shared applies universally. What paralyzes them is their fear of the consequences. They see what the terror state does to those who stand up in defiance. Imprisonment, isolation, mind-numbingly long sentences, and the full force of psychological torment designed to disassemble the human personality. It reasonably makes anyone think twice about taking action, about doing anything that would substantially challenge the terror state. Understandably. But it seems to me that we overestimate what the enemy can really do to us. This overestimation is a common phenomenon. We've all experienced it. We've imagined the pain and suffering of consequences to be far worse than they really are. The kids on the playground give up their lunch money to the bully, for example, because they imagine the bully's wrath to be much more than it really is, until one of them gets punched in the nose and realizes they can live through that. They realize the bully's wrath was not nearly what they imagined. In fact, the punch in the nose, all things being equal, is far less painful than the empty stomachs that result from giving up the lunch money. So once you face the bully's wrath and you realize he ain't so tough, you pound him in the face with a big red brick and you take your lunch money back. I would suggest that the modern terror state is much like that schoolyard bully. Its wrath is not as great as we imagine. I'm something of an expert on the terror state's wrath. It's unleashed its worst on me for decades. And based on this experience, I've come to see that our collective enemy can only do 5 things to me. Only 5 things. Whatever the terror state does to impose itself can be put into one of these 5 categories. First, property. The terror state can seize my property or destroy my property or throw my property away. Recently, the state trashed my guitar and typewriter and a whole box of my legal work. But it's just property. Over time, it can all be replaced. Second thing, transfer. The terror state can move me from one prison to another, can transfer me. Most recently, I was transferred to the Super Duper Max. But I was unfree at the last place, and I'm unfree now. You're unfree too. So transfer is just one state of unfreedom instead of another. Third thing, segregation. The terror state can move me from one place inside the prison to another place where the deprivation is more intense. Most recently, I spent 7 months in the hole at Warren Correctional. But again, this is one state of unfreedom for another. You and I are unfree, so we're unfree in segregation and population and on the other side of the fence. Fourth thing, physical pain. The terror state can assault and torture me. I've experienced that more times than I can count. I've experienced more concussions in my captivity than the average Cleveland Browns quarterback. But you know what? Except for the fact that I'm a lot dumber than I used to be, my physical injuries always heal. Physical pain is temporary, just like the bully's punch to the nose. The fifth thing, assassination. The terror state can kill us. Most recently, friends inside Lucasville warned me of a plot by prison staff to murder me and stage it as a suicide. The terror state has a long history of killing its critics and opponents. It's actually quite flattering when you reach the level of importance that the fascists seek to assassinate you. It means you're doing something right. And consider, we only live once and we only die once. We have to make both our lives and our deaths count for something. I suppose I'd rather get assassinated by the forces of darkness than sputter out due to high cholesterol from eating too many greasy cheeseburgers. So that's all of it. Those are the 5 things the terror state can do to us. Property, transfer, increased states of deprivation, physical pain, and death. 5 things. Everything the terror state does can fall into those categories. Those are the things that paralyze us, that neutralize us, that prevent us from taking meaningful action against the fascist forces of non-freedom. And in our paralysis, we experience all 5 of them, just at lesser degrees. When we think about it like this, the terror state is really relatively powerless. It can only do 5 things to us. So let me ask you, if we weren't paralyzed by the overestimation of the terror state's power, how many things could we do to it? That's power. Time to exercise it. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from the Super Duper Max in Youngstown, Ohio. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at his new/old address at Sean Swain, number 243-205, Ohio State Penitentiary, 878 Coatesville Hubbard Road, Youngstown, Ohio, 44505. To read more of Sean's writings and keep up on his case, visit seanswain.org.
Firstly, thank you so much for your time and coming onto the radio with us. It's a huge honor to get to speak with you about this work.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Definitely. Would you say your name if you choose to, and a bit about yourself also if you choose to, and some about the work you do?
Sure. So my name is Lelia. I'm indigenous to the Sierra Madre in what's now Mexico. I'm from the Otomi tribe. I'm 25 years old. I am in the U.S. because imperialism forced me to leave my land when I was 9 years old. So that's why I'm here. I'm a parent. I'm a community organizer here in the Charlotte area. I have many friends. I'm a communist. I'm interested in the arts, healing justice. I co-parent 3 siblings. And yeah, I'm just, dedicated to making positive, needed, changes in my community.
Word. How did you come to communism, if you don't mind my asking?
Sure. So I think I began moving into leftism because I was a feminist. I've always had that need. In my community, back where I'm from, all of the families are led by matriarchs. So that was something that was very natural to me, but I never had the word because in what's now Mexico, we don't have access to, literature, what is feminism, third wave, intersectionality, none of that. But it was something that was like within me. So when I came into the U.S. and I was around 17, 18 years old, I, started reading about feminism and stuff like that. I think the Charlotte riots that happened a couple of years ago really pushed me to see the need and to something more because, we have to bring change. Capitalism is not going to work for us. So that's how I got here. Mm-hmm.
Were you talking about the Charlotte uprising that happened in 2016?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're here to talk about a group called Comunidad Colectiva. When and how did this group get started, and what are its goals generally?
So Comunidad Colectiva is a grassroots org that focuses on disrupting ICE enforcement in collaboration with local officers, and who first came together when Trump was elected. So when that happened, a lot of people were very scared and, anxious about the way that Trump was talking about immigrants and how things would be worse or more obvious because everything was just as bad under Obama. But I think Trump put a lot of fear into people. Comunidad Colectiva has spearheaded a campaign to decrease local immigration detention in Charlotte. We have worked closely with Sheriff McFadden to terminate the 287G ICE agreement, to stop honoring ICE detainers, and eliminate all possible collaboration with ICE. So that's what we have been focusing on in the past. We are also trying to reimagine what our future looks like for our org. what is it that we want to do in the future? What is it that we can do to heal ourselves and move on from just being on the defense? What is it that we can do for our communities? We're hoping that maybe in a couple of months we can begin our youth group. So this is something that is really exciting for us. So right now we're just trying to reimagine also what are our goals and what is it that we can do besides just focusing on being like on guard? How can we, I don't know, foment growth within our communities?
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense and is definitely something I want to talk to you further in the interview. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about working in collaboration with like local officers and sheriffs, like what about that like makes sense to the work, and like what about that, how has that been for you and for the organization?
Sure. So the work, the campaign to push for a new sheriff that would terminate the 287G contract, which, you know, is a contract that is a collaboration with ICE. That was a bit tricky just because a lot of the Colectiva members, me included, are against cops and sheriffs included and stuff like that. But it made sense because in this specific case, this sheriff was running on a platform of ending 287G. So we had to take that opportunity and push for that because we knew that that would bring a lot of long-term help to what we were doing. And that's the reason why we decided to push for Sheriff McFadden in this case to be elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for talking about that. I could imagine, like, as someone who's also, like, anti-police and the institution of police, I also recognize the sort of intellectual or, you know, psychological dissonance that is required for, like, well, this is, like, really important for safety right now, and we have to negotiate with these structures of power to, like, keep ourselves and keep our communities safe. And I'm interested in that sort of tension there, you know.
Yeah, it's rough because obviously, you know, the ending of the 287G campaign was pushed by two people in Colectiva, one of them Stefania and another person whom I don't want to mention just because I don't know if they would like me to. But I noticed, like, within the leftist community in Charlotte how, you know, a lot of people felt uncomfortable to support the sheriff. It was like, what are we doing here? Why are we supporting a sheriff to be elected? Why are we putting our energy for this to happen? So it was really difficult. I know that, and we'll touch bases this later on, but I know that for that campaign, it was important to not only include the ending of 287G in pushing for this sheriff, but also to end solitary confinement of minors in the jails, because that was the thing here in Charlotte, and to bring back also in-person visitation. And I think it's important to realize that right now we have to work with the structures that we have right now. And unfortunately, that includes sheriffs and cops and jails and stuff like that. So we had to come to a consensus and realize that that was just something that we would have to deal with at the moment, you know, supporting for the sheriff to be elected. And he did end the 287G contract, so that was good.
I mean, that's something, you know. I feel like I could talk about that for, like, that specific, like, trouble within, like, organizing for a long time, but in the interest of moving on and, like, not taking up too much of your day. So we've been talking a lot about ICE and mobilizing against ICE. What does a successful rapid response network for responding to violence from ICE look like for you? Like, what are some successes or inspirations that you've seen, or some shortcomings you'd like to see addressed?
Sure. So When the 287G contract was ended by the sheriff, we knew that ICE was going to retaliate. So we had a couple of months to prepare. We actually have a rapid response network in place already. Thanks to the help of a lot of our comrades, we were able to get together and begin planning what would this look like. We received the help from comrades at Siembra and comrades from SEMA, and they're based out of Asheville. So we looked at different models of rapid response networks, and we came, with ours. We talked about because we have dealt with raids in the past. So what is it that we need? How can we help our community? What is it that we can do with our capacity? We talked about texting systems. We put them in place. What is it that we could do to mitigate the damage that was being caused by ICE? So I think that one of our strengths, is that we were very united in trying to do this. We had a lot of people in our rapid response network that were highly committed. We were prepared, and I think that made such a difference against just shifting from being on the defensive as opposed to being on the defensive and being prepared. So that was really good. We set up, again, the texting system. When we had word that ICE was going to begin with the raids the following day, we got prepared. Everybody was ready. We had a hotline, so we set a hotline where people would call if they noticed or they suspected ICE activity. So people would call the hotline or send us messages through Facebook. We would send our verifiers that were trained on what to do and how to deal with ICE agents. We would send them out to, wherever ICE activity was suspected, and they would go, they would record, they would ask questions to the ICE agents. They would ask them, why are you here? What are you looking for? And put pressure on them. We would have a list of things that they would say to the people that were being arrested. For example, don't give them your fingerprints, don't speak to them, ask for your lawyer, so on and so forth. And then we would send, the text alerts to people and just letting them know ICE is present at this gas station, be careful. So those are some of the things that we were doing as part of our rapid response network. Around that time, our following on Facebook also grew from around 3,000 likes to about 26,000 now. Because when we were confirming ICE activity, we would also go to our Facebook page and say, ICE is present, in this area, be careful, and then that would get shared with more people. So our Facebook page was definitely one of the tools that we had to protect our community by alerting people.
So since ICE is a group which foments a lot of anxiety, how do you deal with false information or rumors in these rapid response scenarios?
Yeah, so we actually had to deal with that multiple times. So we are the main grassroots org for our community right now. But people have created, these pages where you report ICE activity and stuff like that have been active for quite a while. Nobody knows who manages them. There is no management to them in general. But what has happened is that, sometimes people say, there's going to be massive raids. For example, in this case that happened on Friday, and then that post gets shared like 24,000 times, and people get so scared because they think that this is going to happen. So what we've had to do is that once we confirm that this is just a rumor, and we have multiple ways of confirming this, we will take a screenshot of that post or of that rumor, and we will share it on our Facebook page and put a message saying, this is just a rumor. Please do not keep sharing this. Or what we've also done is contact the people that are spreading the rumor and privately ask them to delete it. And usually we don't get a response, but that we've had to deal with that. And to answer the question, by addressing it head on and sharing that it's a rumor, it's how we're able to minimize the anxieties of people.
That sounds like a really, really good strategy because I think that, like, especially on Facebook, Facebook is just infamous for
Yeah,
sort of like muddying up like how people communicate. So I think that like the
yeah,
direct messaging and being like, yeah, this is a rumor, and just being really like clear and direct, even with like somebody who might maliciously be attempting to spread a rumor, like sounds really great.
yeah. The other thing that we have tried to do to minimize fear and unnecessary anxiety is that when we share our messages on Facebook, or when we notice that people are sharing, by themselves, or, reporting ICE activity, we ask, and this is what we do, we ask that they timestamp their post. Although Facebook, it comes with like its own timestamp, a lot of people, especially within like the undocumented community that might not be very familiar with social media, Facebook, etc., they might not notice that, things are timestamped or they have dates, etc. So we set the date, we put the time, and then we put the message. That way, if it gets shared, 5 days from now, people will not be scared or think that it's happening at that time. They will see that this happened 5 days ago around that time. So that's something that we do within our messaging, and we ask people to do when they're reporting any suspicious activity.
I think that's so simple and but just so vital to accurate information sharing. This is The Final Straw, a weekly anarchist radio show, and I'm William Goodenough. We're talking to Lelia about effective rapid response networks when informing affected communities about ICE checkpoints or possible raids, and how best to minimize anxiety and fear. And now we'll talk about the most recent widely publicized ICE raids in North Carolina from our guest's perspective. So by now, we've been talking about the most recent widely publicized ICE raids in North Carolina happened in early February. By now, listeners will have heard about that. Will you talk about what has been happening regarding these raids in the past couple of weeks and in the past couple of years?
So the thing is that North Carolina has not had a strong infrastructure of immigrants' rights organizing or legal support. So that combination of no legal support and not having a strong infrastructure has allowed ICE to have like a free reign to deport people in our counties. Back in 2014, there was an influx of Central American children in the U.S., including Charlotte, that were fleeing violence created by, U.S. imperialism. And, back in 2016, there was a shift in priority of who was getting deported. So beforehand, they were prioritizing deporting quote unquote criminals and, bad people, etc. And then that changed in 2016 because they were coming for everybody. It didn't matter if you had a record or if you were, again, quote unquote, a criminal. They were just coming for everybody. Everybody was getting arrested no matter what. And there was this case of, his name is Jeffrey Soto, who was a teenager who was arrested at his high school bus stop. So around that time is when we started getting more support because people started, realizing how ICE was acting without impunity and they were acting not caring whatsoever as to who they were coming for, affecting everybody. And then, back in 2017, we had, again, a huge amount of raids. They brought a lot of fear because it was just so many people that were arrested. So, along with other grassroots orgs in the area, we organized a strike, one-day strike, where we asked people to not go to work, to not send their kids to school, do no shopping, and, join us at a march uptown. And around that time, we had about, 24,000 people. So it was important, again, for us to show that we would not back down and we were not going to show fear at these raids. We were not going to be intimidated, and we were going to show up. And, the masses showed up at that march. We had a lot of people And yeah, this time again, the raids came, and thankfully we were better prepared, and we minimized the amount of people that were arrested by alerting the community as to ICE activity.
I am intrigued about that one-day strike. Could you talk a little bit more about like that as a tactic and like how that went?
Yeah, so I personally was not directly involved with organizing that time for that rally, for that march, but I know that the expectation was to only have a couple of thousand people show up, and we had, like a lot of people show up that time. We took the streets, and yeah, I think the tactic was used not only to show ICE that we were not going to be intimidated by the raid, but also to bring a sense of purpose, empowerment to the community that was being affected. And I think that they felt that. They felt proud, a lot of like social media support. A lot of businesses closed their doors. We had major Latinx supermarkets that supported us, and there was just a lot of show of solidarity from them. So yeah, it was just a lot of support, and the people felt empowered by that.
I was also interested to know more about how you started off your statement about how North Carolina has not had very strong immigrant rights infrastructure, and like that really paving the way for all of the stuff that has been happening right now. I was wondering if you would feel comfortable saying a little bit more about that.
Yes, it's been a little bit difficult to bring attention to this issue. So let's see here. Back in the 90s and 2000s is when there was a lot of Latin American migration to North Carolina. And then in 2006 is when the 287G contract was signed off in Mecklenburg County. I guess it's been gradual, which is why we haven't seen that infrastructure. Back in 2014 is when, there was that influx of Central American children. And then 2016, things started changing. So it's been slowly. 2017, we had, the raids in North and South Carolina. Sheriff Carmichael renewed the 287G agreement back then. And I think it was back in November 2017 that over 40 Mecklenburg County residents and public defenders, professors, students attended a 287G steering committee meeting where people started talking about why do we have this contract and how is it benefiting us? How is it, hurting our community? So it's been slow. There was an org called Familias Unidas back in 2006 that got started by families that were being affected by this 287G contract. One of my cousins was actually directly affected. He was stopped on the highway. He had some car issues, I believe. So he stopped on the side of the road to see what was going on with his car. And, he was approached by police and he was put in deportation proceedings. So that was Familias Unidas. They did not get that much support. I don't know why, but it's been rough to get support. I think it was from when Trump came into office that people started realizing that everything is interconnected, and this is not just about immigrants' rights. This is not just affecting the Latinx community. Immigration is not just a Latinx community. It's an issue that affects everybody. So yeah, it's been slow to get support, and that's why we are at this point. Hopefully from now on we can get more support and grow, and I hope everything gets better.
Yeah, me too. And I think your point about how Trump coming into power has shown a lot of people how interconnected everything was, because you mentioned that like stuff was just as bad in different under Obama. The political moment right now is very interesting because people seem to be more widely connecting a lot of these dots that they just weren't connecting under Obama. So this happened right at around the time of these most recent ICE raids back in early February, but I and many others were angered and horrified at the comment made by ICE about these raids being the new normal. Will you talk about this phrase and what it means coming from a group like ICE?
Yeah, I could not believe when they said that this was going to be the new normal. When they said that, everybody was at capacity. And I remember that at first it was painful to hear this. And because when you're in that mindset, you're like, how is this a new normal? I cannot deal with this any much longer. Being in the core group for the rapid response program was extremely exhausting, debilitating. It was rough. And just hearing them say that this was going to be the new normal, it was a lot. But, it clearly shows that ICE is trying to intimidate us. They know that ending 287G was going to be putting a huge strain on their system. What they're doing is not sustainable. So the rates that they're doing, the way that they were handling that, it's not sustainable whatsoever. I think that it's important, and it kind of highlights how we need to be more militant and fight back against ICE, regardless of what they say. Again, instead of always being on the defensive, we have to fight back. We have to show them that if they think that this is going to be the new normal, we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that does not happen, or that they are met with the same amount of force that they are trying to push on us.
I know that this comparison is a little bit rooted in some things that are problematic, but it seemed to me that when I heard the phrase the new normal, I thought of fascist governments. And I know that comparing America or the US to fascism is a really loaded statement because for so many communities, the US has always been a force of terror, for indigenous communities, for Black communities, for brown communities. This has never been a utopia. And I heard from an indigenous person that fascism is what people in the U.S. call it when settler colonialism is applied to white people, basically. And I thought that was very thought-provoking. But yeah, new normal really felt to me like a slow-boiling fascist pot sort of thing. Or you have to get used to this because this is the new world order or whatever. I'm really fired up about the need to fight back and the need to be more offensive. It's exhausting work, but it's unfortunately super, super necessary. So we've mentioned 287G a lot, and I'd love to know, will you talk about this a little bit more? What is it, and what did it, and what does it mean for communities that are affected?
Sure. So 287G was a contract between local officials and ICE, and it basically put people in deportation proceedings right away. If, for example, you were arrested or if you were stopped by CMPD, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, they would ask a couple of questions. If you did not have the proper identification, they would arrest you, take you to jail, where there would be deputies working as ICE agents who would run you through their database and basically put you in deportation proceeding right away. It didn't matter if your charges got dismissed. It didn't matter, for example, if you did nothing wrong. With my cousin, he was just trying to see what was going on with his car on the side of the road, and he was put in deportation proceedings because of that. So that is gone, but the work continues because it's more than that. We don't want ICE in our jails. We don't want them in our streets. We don't want them in our courthouses. We want to terminate this prison pipeline that exists. So although 287G is not a contract anymore here in Mecklenburg County, it's in place in a couple of other counties around, and ICE is still here. ICE is still in our communities. So the work continues even if this contract is gone.
Yeah. I can imagine it being like utterly terrifying for ICE to be working with police like that. It essentially just makes the police into an extension of ICE,
Exactly.
which is super dangerous. The police
Yeah.
are already super dangerous.
Exactly.
We're going to take a brief musical break, and you'll be hearing Calle Trece with the musical stylings of Silvio Rodriguez, and the track is Ojos Color Sol.
Hoy el sol se escondió y no quiso salir, te vio despertar y le dio miedo de morir. Abriste los ojos y el sol guardó su pincel porque tú pintas el paisaje mejor que él. Cuando amanece, tu lindura, cualquier constelación se pone insegura. Tu belleza huele a mañana y me da de comer durante toda la semana. Tus ojos hacen magia, son magos, los abriste y ahora se reflejan las montañas en los lagos. La única verdad absoluta es que cuando naciste tú a los árboles les nacieron frutas. Naranja dulce, siembra de querube, como el sol tenía miedo se escondió en una nube. Hoy el sol no hace falta, está en receso. La vitamina D me la das tú con un beso. La luna sale a caminar siguiendo tus pupilas. La noche brilla original después que tú la miras. Ya nadie sabe ser feliz a costa del despojo. Gracias a ti y a tus ojos. Eres un verso en reversa. Un reverso, despertaste y le diste vuelta a mi universo. Ahora se llega a la cima, bajando por la sierra. La tierra ya no gira, tú giras por la tierra. En la guerra se dan besos, ya no se pelean. Hoy las gallinas mugen y las vacas cacarean. Las lombrices y los peces pescan los anzuelos. Se vuela por el mar y se navega por el cielo. Crecen flores en la arena, cae lluvia en el desierto. Ahora los sueños son reales porque se sueña despierto.
Y ese sueño es seguro y así se reproduce. Y la inocencia por fin no se esconde de las luces.
La escasez de comida se vuelve deliciosa porque tenemos la barriga llena de mariposas.
La galaxia revela su comarca escondida y en la tierra parece que comienza la vida. La luna sale a caminar siguiendo tus pupilas. La noche brilla original después que tú la miras. Ya nadie sabe ser feliz a costa del despojo. Gracias a ti y a tus ojos.
This is the Final Straw radio show, and I'm your host, William. We're talking with Lelia, who is a community organizer with the Charlotte-based immigrants' rights group Comunidad Colectiva, about fighting against 287G, a contract between police departments and ICE. Now we will talk about some thoughts related to the long-term healing of trauma associated with ICE. So, because of the traumas that ICE inflicts on affected communities, and you mentioned this a little bit before in the interview, does longer-term support for folks who are affected by ICE exist? And if not, are there things you would like to see happen for the healing of trauma?
So this is like a loaded question, and I have so many thoughts on it because we came to the realization at our last core meeting for Colectiva that we don't even have that for ourselves. And we want to create support for our communities, for kids that are being affected. There's a lot of terror that was created by the raids. And that's something that we're going to see that affects people, the way that they act, the way that they interact with others. We want to create healing spaces for our youth. There are other orgs that are helping when it comes to healing trauma with kids. There is a great organization called Our Bridge, and they work with immigrant kids. And just hearing about the work that they do and hearing about how kids are being affected, how they're trying to call their parents while they're, in this after-school program, how they're scared that they're not going to see their parents anymore, how they show their anxiety while they play, how they're not happy anymore. I feel like that's something that is highly, highly needed. This is work that is very triggering to a lot of us. So the members of Comunidad Colectiva, the core members, a lot of us are illegal, undocumented is the label that a lot of people want to use. We have a lot of insecurities when it comes to being displaced again. I feel like the raids and the work that we had to do for that is something that triggered a very depressive episode in me. And this is something that I'm seeing now in March, in late March, like weeks and weeks and weeks after the raids were going on. So I can just imagine how our communities are going to feel for time to come with no support whatsoever. People that are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, single parent households. It's just a lot. And I do hope that we can move on and make that also a priority. I feel like within leftist circles and organizing circles, there is not enough of a focus on healing. And I feel like that's imperative that we focus on.
Yeah, definitely. And a recognition that healing can look like a lot of different things and not just, oh, go do yoga or whatever.
Right.
It can look
exactly.
it can look like an endless amount of things. So do you have an opinion on why this government has a bunch of money to fund ICE, which rips apart families and damages communities, but other social services like food stamps and public housing are being cut?
Well, yeah, we live in a capitalist society, so the people are never going to be a priority. Our needs are never going to be met by them. We're always going to be harmed by them. And, protecting the interests of the bourgeoisie is the only interest that they have. Stefania was mentioning to me how ICE had allocated 9 deputies who were being paid around $60,000 each to help this process, this collaboration between police and ICE. And, I just think of how much we could do with that money. So I'm not good at math, but 60,000 times 9, that's a pretty good amount. And it could go a long way when it comes to helping people that are houseless, helping people leave abusive situations. There's just so much that we could do, but we have to realize that our needs are never going to be met by the government. And this is something that we must take care by ourselves. We have to show solidarity within each other. We have to work with each other. We have to learn to survive and rethink a world without our government, with this government that we have. That's my opinion. I feel like fuck ICE and the government for being in place and destabilizing our countries, which are forcing us to leave and to come here. I know personally myself, I wish that I was back in my land. I wish that I was in the mountains that I'm from. I wish that I could go up the mountains and gather food and tend to my community there. But no, I have to live here. So our needs are never going to be met by this government, and we have to, it's our duty to create a new world.
So, are you familiar with the case of Raekwon Borum, who just got sentenced to 26 years in Mecklenburg County? He was part of the Charlotte uprising and got arrested and framed in relation to that. Do you have any words on his case?
Yeah, that was so scary. It's so unfair. It's so hurtful how 2 people lost their lives around that time. And then now Raekwon Borum is in prison, and he's going to be there for a while because the system is always going to protect itself. It's never going to bring any accountability, and they don't have that capacity to bring anybody accountability. It also makes me think of how there is a huge backlash on activists and organizers, and how he was out there trying to protest and he was framed. So this is what happened to somebody that was just protesting the murder of somebody, and now he is in prison, and he's going to be there for a long time. And yeah, it just makes me think of how ICE and this government targets organizers and activists, and how scary that is, and how quickly one situation can be used against you, and you could be looking at 24, 25, 26 years as well, or deported. So yeah, it's extremely depressing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's like not really too much more, other than like we need to keep supporting him. And on that note, is there anything that you or your comrades might ask of an explicitly anarchist audience, since an explicitly anarchist audience might be listening to this show right now?
Yeah, that made me think of something real quick. So I'm also in the executive committee for another org, which is called Charlotte Revolutionary Collective. We led, along with another org, this Occupy ICE movement here last year, and a lot of the support that we received were from anarchists throughout North Carolina. So that was amazing. So it reminded me of that, the question of, is there anything you would like to ask of an explicitly anarchist audience? But I don't know. I know that there's a lot of anarchists that have signed up to our verifiers group, the people that we send out to confront ICE agents. So I know that that's one of the ways that we could get support. So the people that go out to verify ICE activity and confront ICE agents are people that are level-headed, that will be able to speak with ICE agents, something that not a lot of people are comfortable doing, but most importantly, have citizenship privilege. So if they were to get arrested or something like that, they would be able to, get bailed out, and they wouldn't be put in deportation proceedings. That's not something that, for example, I could do. One of the needs that we were talking about the other day is also how we don't have a lot of help with graphics. So we try to do a lot of things on Canva, but that's not very helpful sometimes. We don't have the skills. So if there are any anarchists out there that would like to help us with with graphics and stuff like that, we would appreciate that a lot.
Cool. Maybe somebody out there who's listening who knows how to
Yeah.
work Photoshop or something could do something. And the verifiers group, I think, is super, super important here in Asheville as well. So how can listeners support Comunidad Colectiva and support the other work that you're doing that you've mentioned?
I think that one of the ways we could use the help on is basically disrupting this narrative of good immigrants and bad immigrants within any circles that you might be in. That's one of the issues that we see a lot of people, thinking that dreamers are the ones that should be here and that deserve to feel secure living in the U.S. and, criminalizing people, or people that drive drunk should be deported, and that's they were looking for that. So I think that listeners can support our work by disrupting those narratives. Also, being more vocal when it comes to seeing people being racist. And right now, if we're a grassroots org. The whole Rapid Response Network was put together by us. We don't have any help from nonprofits. The texting system that we have in place, alerting people that sign up for it, was paid out of pocket. We have paid thousands of dollars for that rapid response texting system that we have. So if anybody wants to donate to our Venmo, feel free to do so. If not, that's perfectly fine, because we also have to think of ways of getting support that go beyond money when we get to a place where we don't, even use money. So reaching out, asking how is it that y'all can help, and we can always think of something.
Yeah, I connect with what you said about needing to get to a place where we don't need money. Unfortunately, still, it's like a very real thing that we need and that affects people's lives super materially.
Yep.
So, like, acknowledging that while also moving toward something different, I think is awesome. What is y'all's Venmo?
It is Comunidad Colectiva.
Lelia, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the radio show. I got a lot out of talking to you, and it's been really, really great hearing your perspective, and I think that I hope listeners will feel the same. Is there anything that we missed in this interview that you'd like to see included?
No, I think we covered everything. Thank you so much for your patience and for having me, for giving us a platform to talk a little bit more about us. And it makes a difference. Again, we haven't had much of an infrastructure before when it comes to immigrant rights orgs in the area. So, we're putting in that work. So we really, really appreciate you reaching out, talking to us, being patient with me, and for supporting.
Thanks for listening to our interview with Lelia, who is an organizer with the immigrants' rights group Comunidad Colectiva based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. You can keep updated on their work by hitting them up on Facebook at facebook.com/Comunidad Colectiva CLT. And if you have a few dollars you'd like to throw them to recoup the costs associated with their rapid response network, their Venmo is at COMUNIDAD-COLECTIVA. Next week on The Final Straw, stay tuned for an interview with a member of the Montreal-based group Ni Frontières Ni Prison, which is No Borders, No Prison, about fighting a proposed new migrant prison, decolonization, the rise of far-right sentiment in so-called Canada, and many associated topics, plus a possible other interview, so stay tuned for that. This is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816.